Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast, and a happy new year to everybody listening and watching at home. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, Tottenham Hotspur 0, Aston Villa 2 happened yesterday. I can't quite believe that it's happened. I don't think it's fully processed yet that Villa won away
Mhm.
from home against the Champions League contending side, top four, battling. Will they make it based off yesterday's performance? I don't think so, but nevertheless, what a win! What a performance! How you doing, mate?
I'm good, thank you, mate. I'm good. I'm not sure the same can be said of you. You're
No,
sounding
absolutely.
a little bit rough this morning. But when the Villa filler comes at you, hoarse and bleary-eyed, let me check the time. It was before 9 a.m. It can only mean one thing. It can only mean one thing, and that's a win. Because had we lost yesterday, I think this podcast would probably be coming out you at least 2 hours later on. But no, mate, it's very good. It's very good. It felt like a win that we probably owe an apology to Unai Emery because I think as a podcast we seriously underestimated our chances of going down to North London yesterday and picking up even a point. To be fair, I think I predicted a point. The one thing I will say is
You
we
do,
did
yeah.
we did both predict 2 goals.
We'll
We
take
just
that.
both predicted that Spurs would score at least two. So yeah, we got half of the scoreline right, and we'll take our victories where we can get them, mate.
Absolutely. This is it's a podcast full of apologies, mate, because again, we need to talk about Robin Olsen. Albeit he
Yes.
didn't have much to do, but he was, as I kind of mentioned in the last podcast, and every time we've spoke about Robin Olsen, it's the catch-22 of he's got no confidence, but he doesn't have minutes, and you can only get confidence in minutes, and the two kind of work in tandem. And we saw today, Unai Emery repaying his faith in him, and that I quite like that. Some people are looking into it like, oh, he's not played Emmy, like there must be that beef that they've been talking about and the papers have been reporting, which is obviously utter nonsense. But for Unai to play Robin, I genuinely do have a lot of respect for that for Unai as a man manager because like to not to retread the Liverpool game again, but my only big beef with Robin in that game was the third goal. Other than that, I didn't think he was as bad as we all or Twitter maybe made him out to be. Um, so shout out to Robin Olsen and looking at Emmy. Emmy looks like in a worse state that I am in, and that's understandable because he's been on like a 2 week bender in Argentina. The man doesn't look like he slept. I would not have been comfortable with him in goal after seeing what he looked like and seeing all the photos from Getty and all that kind of stuff. He was not in a good way whatsoever. So um, I think another shout out to Unai for his man management there and putting that belief in Robin Olsen, and that's all we can ask for really because like if we're looking at the squad, it's unchanged from Liverpool, and he's putting his faith in these players and he's backing them, and that's all we can ask for because listen, Ashley Young and Robin Olsen aren't going to play every week, and we know what we're going to get from Ash, but he's telling these lads who are maybe on the fringes, if we're talking about Robin Olsen specifically in this example, if you play well, I can trust you. You're going to get minutes here, and that's really important. And I think he did say in his post-match interview that Emmy's the number one, and Robin understands his role. But this is where the squad is so important. And I think, you know, could we have a better backup goalkeeper? Absolutely, we could. But the fact that Robin Olsen's managed to step up, he's kept a clean sheet. Um, his distribution was a lot better, I thought, yesterday as well, mate. He certain and again, that's something that certainly comes down to nerves and playing games. I think he made 24 of 38 accurate passes, which is only 63%. But generally, I felt that the accurate ones, the accurate ones were good. Like there was a few, he played a little slight one, sort of in behind Mings that kind of took out three Spurs players and got to Dougie, which was a really nice pass. And yeah, I think we have to kind of give him the credit where the credit's due, there, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for Robin, that's his best game in a Villa shirt. It's his first win,
Hmm.
right? So,
I think so.
definitely in the league. Definitely in the league. It's the first time, and a lot of these have sort of come away from home. And you mentioned in the post-Liverpool game that the sort of atmosphere at Villa Park and the nerves that built up around the stadium whenever he got on the ball did him no favors. And I think maybe in that respect, going away from home might actually have been what he needed, just to sort of get in a new environment. And I think we were a bit, in his defense, I think we were a bit smarter with the way that we trusted him to play out yesterday. I don't feel like as much of it was sort of 10, 15-yard passes. I felt like where we could, we tried to execute long balls to try and pin Ollie up against the centre halves and play around him. And I think we really did a good job of that. And so, yeah, I was keen to get on here and say sort of, I'm really pleased for him, because it hasn't been an easy start to his life, as a keeper at Villa. It's going to, and I think the unfortunate reality is that for what has been his best performance in a Villa shirt, he probably won't get to keep it for the next game. I imagine that by the time that the next sort of few fixtures around, we will go back to Emmy in goal, but you imagine that he'll get the Stevenage game and stuff like that. So hopefully we can continue to progress in the cup, because that's got to be, as much as Sky Sports are disappointed to hear it, we're not in a relegation battle anymore, and we don't have to look over our shoulders at that. And we can look to cup competitions to try and find some success this season, or relative success at least. And he'll get the run there, and it's nice that for what looks like could be his last league appearance of the season, he's ended on a high, which is important.
What was the sort of the noise like from Sky? Because I heard some mixed sort of things on Twitter, and it's always interesting when it's anyone against sort of big six air quotes side, because like there is always this feeling, and Sky can say how impartial they are, and we'll know they'll never mean it, but there's always this sort of feeling that a team like Villa comes to Tottenham Hotspur and causes an upset, and it's like we're the bad guys.
Yes, yeah, there is an element of that, and a few people have been like very vigilant. Villa fans have been very vigilant on Twitter, like pulling out quotes from not just Sky but BBC Sport as well. Where I've just finished up working, and it's very hard to be impartial when you're commentating on a football game, especially when one of them involves the sort of big six, because I found in my time there that like naturally you gravitate towards them because that's where the majority of your audience comes from. So you're trying, like, you play the game of like the majority, basically. You're trying to please more people than not. And I remember when we beat Man United, I was doing stuff on the Villa game there, and like I was getting like replies like, "Admin is so obviously a Man United fan. This is so biased." And I was like, "Guys, you have no idea." I was actually quite pleased. I was like, it shows that I'm doing my job well. That people think I'm a Man United fan over a Villa fan. It means I'm doing things all right. And it is difficult, but yeah, I mean, Sky were obviously a lot of the conversation is more around the fact that Spurs have lost again, more than the fact that Villa have won, which I guess in the grand scheme of things might be a bigger story. I mean, that streak continues, which I spoke about before the game, in that they've now set that club record for conceding 2 goals in 7 straight league games. And all of that stuff around Antonio Conte. I mean, he's always been a very honest manager, and he said post-game that the best they can hope for this season is probably about 5th in the league. But yeah, it was weird because obviously Sky do their normal coverage, and at the end of the game they showed how the result has affected the 2 sides in the table. And I mean, we're sat like 12th now, and they were like, "Oh, good result for Villa as it pushes them further away from the relegation zone and all this." And I'm like, I don't think we're in that fight anymore, guys. I really don't.
Right.
I mean, we're more optimistic than most as Villa fans. But yeah, I really don't think we're in that battle anymore. But it was Don Goodman on Sky, and people say that commentators, hate their club is terrible tripe. It really is. But there were moments yesterday I was like, well, it did feel a little bit forced, shall I say? I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. We need to talk about Ashley Young, mate. This man at 37 years old is doing things that quote unquote goats just can't even do. Like Ashley Young, honest dialogue here. Ashley Young is better than Cristiano Ronaldo right now. They're the exact same age, and one
I
of them
think you
has
might be
ended up
right.
in Al Nasser in Saudi Arabia, and the other one is Mr. Inspector Gadget in his neck so as he can keep goal line clearances against Tottenham in the Premier League. Like there is genuinely levels, and there needs to be. There isn't enough credit that is sort of praised on him. Like throughout the whole World Cup, and even before that, whenever Ronaldo plays, everyone goes, "Wow, Ronaldo's so good. He's 37 years old, right?" What people like aren't like failing to understand is, and I think maybe it probably comes down to the fact that Ashley Young probably when he left Manchester United, it's almost as if he left out of the back door, right? People had forgotten he was there at that point, and he'd gone from being this quick winger who would beat defenders and win penalties and score free kicks and all this kind of stuff to being this guy who a bird shat in his mouth when he played right back. That's how Ashley Young's time at United ended, realistically. He goes out to Inter Milan at 30, 31, 32, goes and wins a Scudetto, prolongs his career by playing in a league that is less intense. And I was saying that the system and the formation, obviously under Antonio Conte, who we played against yesterday, he's intense. Regardless of that, he's prolonged his career by going to Italy, and he's come back and he looks just as fit, if not fitter, than any of the lads who are 22, 23 in the Premier League. It is a joke. He was keeping up with Heung-min Son in a foot race. That's crazy. He's 37 years old, and I just you guys will know by now. I adore Ashley Young, man. Like he was our childhood for me and Dan. So you'll never catch any Ash slander, but like what a performance from him, mate. And like he just gets it. Like he knows what it means to play football. He knows what it means to play for Aston Villa Football Club, and he sets the standards on the pitch. And there was a lovely crunching tackle. I think it was on Basuma. He just went right through him. I could be wrong. But that kind of stuff, like we don't have that when Ash isn't in the team. And as nice as it would have been for Cashy to start, Ash was just wonderful, mate. And I'll gush over Ashley Young until the day I die and the day he dies, because he is a model pro and light years ahead of Cristiano Ronaldo at his age.
Mate, it's crazy. It really is, because you look at what he's doing at this age, and the fact that he's created twice now this season a situation where Matty Cash has really got to work his way back into the team. It's pretty nuts, because this obviously happened a few months ago as well. And, this is two managers now that Ashley Young has completely won over after they stepped into the club. I mean, when Gerrard came in, one of the first narratives that came out of his early training sessions was how impressed he was by Ashley Young. And it looks to be exactly the same story now with Unai Emery. And I mean, we all know that ideally Matty Cash is the first choice player there. And, no doubt at some point this season, he will establish that position, but he's really got to work for it. And, I mean, you mentioned our childhoods there, mate, and the fact that Ashley Young was such a large part of that, and he was one of the better players and one of the more exciting players in that team that we gravitated towards as like, I don't know, 10, 12-year-olds, whatever it was, around 2008. And he's a year older than Gabby Bonghor, right? And look at the state of Gabby on TalkSport, and it's like that's the difference. You often see these with Ronaldo being older than Wayne Rooney. In that's the difference between a professional that took care of his body and tried to prolong his career and one that didn't. And Ash is still reaping the rewards of that. And the narrative, I think, and the way that we view him as Villa fans has really got to change. Like he's not this sort of like elder statesman that's just around the squad to help young players and to drop in every now and again and do 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there and play in your cup games. Like this is a player that is still seriously wanting to contend and hold down first team positions, and he will play the next game. I can't see any reason why he wouldn't. I think it will be another unchanged 11 as it was for this one, and I can't see any reason why Matty will get the nod in this one, because Young was excellent again yesterday. But yeah, the way that he looked after his body was excellent, and I can imagine that he had a fair bit of responsibility in the build-up to this match, having just come off a couple of seasons with Antonio Conte's title winning side at Inter, helping with sort of inside knowledge on his tactical setup, what he wants his team to do, and everything like that. And yeah, I mean, hell, it's paid off, and I can't see why going into what's going to be a very busy January, we're not going to see a lot more minutes from him.
Absolutely, mate. It's a squad game. We've still got Wolves, Stevenage, Leeds, Southampton all to play. So it's going to be interesting to see how the squad's utilised. The squad was, there was a fair bit of rotation yesterday in terms of subs, but we'll come on to that in a minute because I need to, we highlighted how important the width is to Antonio Conte's sides in the preview with the fullbacks and with the sort of the wide forwards in Son, and it was Brian Hill yesterday as well. And I was worried because we've been playing so narrowly with this 4-2-2. But what was just amazing was the fact that Ash had that helping hand from John McGinn, and Dean also had that from Emi Buendia, because when we was out of possession, it was essentially just a back six, and we were sort of doubling up, which was absolutely the right thing to do and what we needed to do as well, because then you've got 2-on-2 in the middle when it comes to Basuma and Højbjerg versus Buba and Dougie, who were absolutely sublime yesterday, by the way. My two players of the match, for sure. We don't win that game without them two yesterday. But the roles that McGinn and Buendia executed yesterday were absolutely fantastic. And what makes it even better is the two obviously get involved with goal contributions as well at the end of this as well. John McGinn especially. A lot of Villa fans need to apologise to John McGinn. It needs to happen. There needs to be a serious dialogue here. John McGinn's pass to Douglas Luiz for the second goal is just absolutely phenomenal. The weight of that ball is sublime. McGinn looked a lot fitter than he has done in recent weeks as well. The amount of running this man did, it was tireless. He did not stop for a second yesterday. So I do think McGinn needs an apology from a lot of Villa fans. I'm going to include myself in that as well, because I maybe thought he would be someone that was probably dropped yesterday and I had a Coutinho or someone like that. But especially, like, the thing is, there's always going to be people who criticise the team, right? Because we're always going to think we know better than the manager. Firstly, nobody knows better than Unai Emery. We have to just get that out of the way. So there's no point in complaining about team sheets, starting 11s, formations, because this is like the pinnacle of elite coaching at Aston Villa. It's never been better. Nobody has come in with a higher intellect and knowledge of the game. So first of all, we owe it to Unai not to question too many of his decisions. Second of all, we've had 4 managers now, if we're going to include Steve Bruce, who brought John McGinn in, who have played John McGinn. So there is clearly a good player there, and there's clearly something that happens in the training ground, which is something that we will never see, because all the little rondos and the little nutmegs and stuff that we see on the training ground aren't conducive of how football training actually goes. We don't get to see any of the tactical stuff on Villa TV. They won't ever post that on Twitter, because why would they? So, when we see John McGinn doing a silly little nutmeg or falling over or doing whatever, we don't have a clue, mate. We're not even beginning to scratch the surface there. But 4 managers have continued to pick John McGinn. So there's something there is something in that, right? And I think what people sort of don't necessarily understand is the role of a manager is to improve the players that he has to get the best results, right? And you can't just go out and buy players. It was only 2 years ago, mate. We're talking about John McGinn as a £50 million player that Manchester United was seriously looking at. Maybe that is a damning indictment on when Manchester United were at the time. But John McGinn came up and was very good in the Premier League. And it's about finding a role that suits him and having a manager in that can finally get the better out of him and improve him as a player. Because if we're not improving the players individually, we're just going to be shitting money down the drain, bringing players in, and that's not sustainable. We have a squad of players, and if you look at the core of it, mate, whether it's Dean Smith, Unai Emery, or Steven Gerrard, I almost said Unai Emery again, it's practically the same 11. It's the same players that are playing, mate.
Yeah.
So the players have never been the problem. It's quite clearly been the coaching, because we've been through 2 managers in just over a year, and we're on our 3rd manager. So long and convoluted way of saying respect John McGinn. Unai Emery is going to make him and everybody else in the squad a much better player, because that is his job.
I think you hit the nail on the head with finding the right role for him, because, I mean, if you ask me right now, do I think John McGinn is the profile of player that he wants in those wide 10 positions? I'm going to flat out say no. I don't think going forward that like that is the best role for him. But I think we definitely have to make one for him, and we definitely have to find a place in the squad for him because we all know that when he's on his day, he's one of the most unique players we've ever seen play for Villa. Like you can replace him in terms of a role in the squad, but you can never replace the kind of player that he is because I've never seen a player that plays like him, that uses his body like him, and that is such a menace when he's on his game. And I really, really like a true redemption arc from John McGinn. If he can keep this up and keep coming up with big goals, big assists, would just be so great. Would just be so great. And it's a long time been the scourge of Villa fans in that we've seen what he can do internationally, and we know the ability that he has. And we've always wanted to see him do that at Villa Park. And I think at least with Unai, if it isn't in these wide 10 positions, I think we can say that he will try and get him into these advanced areas. He's not playing as deep as he has done in previous managers. And I think Unai's done a really good job of trying to find him a place in the team that can allow him to get into the final third and come up with those goal contributions that he does so often for his country. Do I think that that's going to keep coming from wide areas? No, I don't think it should either because I don't think that's where he is best. But once you get him into almost the 10 position, really operating in and around the outside of the area, making those late runs into the box, picking out passes. He can be really special, and he was yesterday. And the goal yesterday, the second goal is just outrageous. It's such a good goal, and the pass from McGinn is so excellent. But for Dougie to take that on finish on his right foot as opposed to his left is really something. And he was excellent yesterday. Was Douglas Luiz, and I'm really happy for him because it hasn't been an easy few months. It looks like for him, and for him to go and do that yesterday was really nice. And for it to be a Brazilian that goes and scores, the only Brazilian on the pitch, and the day that we celebrated the life of Pele. Was such a lovely narrative, and for Buendia too. The last 4 goal scorers to have put one past Hugo Lloris have all been Argentinian, and that's 4 of his last 5 Villa goals now have gone on to win games for us in the Premier League. So there's potentially a real clutch player coming out of Emi Buendia now too. I think for those 2 guys in particular. The assist as well from John McGinn. Everybody that contributed to Villa goals yesterday. Ollie Watkins as well, mate.
Needs a shout
that's
out.
not 100%. That's 4 goal contributions in 4 games now under Unai Emery. And it's beginning to look like the type of form which I spoke about in the preview, in that it suddenly starts to quieten down the narrative that we really need a striker in January. Because when you have a striker that's contributing to goals as much as he is, you'd be a fool to look elsewhere. And so, yeah, I think a lot of Villa players are going to start proving us wrong going into the next few months. And I think we almost have to, and I think this relates back to what we said about Robin Olsen, what it says about Ashley Young, completely wipe the slate. For all the Villa players, completely wipe the slate. For Unai as well, for what we expected this Villa team, because we started the podcast by saying we underestimate these guys. I genuinely think we have to completely wipe the slate in terms of what we can expect from these Villa players, what we've seen of them before, and what we think they can do in the future. Because this is going to be a completely new Villa team with completely new ambitions, with a completely different Nelson know-how and how we approach big games. It's going to be totally different. So yeah, I almost think we have to sort of completely start fresh with a lot of these boys. And really think going into these next few games, as I said, going into this one, as much as it's a brilliant win and it's amazing, this is the first time a Villa manager has won his first 2 away games in the league since John Gregory back in 1998. Again, another stat that should definitely have been broken in our lifetimes, but somehow hasn't. It's something that we now look at this run of games, 5 matches now, and think ultimately how big a result this Spurs game is will be judged by these games, because unfortunately, if we win this one and then we go and lose at home to Wolves, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because those are the games that we should be winning. But if we can go into these 5 games and keep up that form and come out the other side with 10, 12 points, then we're in such a good position all of a sudden. But yeah, I think it's a clean slate, totally. Not just in terms of what the players can expect from Unai, but what we as fans should expect from him too.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. The fact that we've come away from home, had 41% of the ball, and left with an XG. We've scored 2 goals, an XG of 1.04 compared to Spurs' 0.66, shows you the game plan was executed to perfection. And that's all we can ask for. And it's wonderful to say that we can go to a top side and execute a game plan and leave with 3 points. And, Villa had 4 shots on target, 13 shots in total yesterday. But it just goes to show how important it is to take good chances in these kind of games. And yeah, quick shout out to Ollie, because as I mentioned in the last podcast, everything he does up until the point where he has to score is phenomenal. And he demonstrated that again yesterday. That's not meant in a slight at him at all. Like, his work rate was phenomenal, and we don't score that first goal without him handing Hugo Lloris there. Hugo Lloris, he spills so many of them shots these days, don't he, mate? It's absolutely criminal. That guy is awful. And Clement Longley as well, mate. What did I say? What did I say about Clement Longley? Absolutely pony, mate. He's shocking. He had a terrible game yesterday. Ollie Watkins is living in his head rent free. But, mate, Boubacar Kamara, Douglas Luiz, this is a partnership of the ages. This is absolutely phenomenal. I can't believe we've stumbled up across this partnership. And not only that, it only cost us £15 million to get these 2 guys. This is absolutely criminal. Like people should investigate us for this. This is remarkable. What impressed me was just, I mentioned in the preview that the impetus on a 2 and how you have to cover so much ground when you're playing in this double pivot. And there has to be that sort of trust that when one goes forward, one stays back. And Dougie and Booba have developed this sort of telepathic connection. And it's the best midfield partnership we've had in the longest time, mate. Boubacar Kamara yesterday made 3 interceptions, 3 tackles, was only dribbled past once, blocked 1 shot, managed to draw 4 fouls, won 8 of his 11 ground duels and won his 1 aerial duel that he engaged in. Douglas Luiz won 5 of his 6 duels, made 1 clearance. I've just clicked off the stats there as well, but I think it was 5 tackles, 5 interceptions. Like, that is a midfield masterclass if I have ever seen one. And to get his goal as well to cap it all off, it's just absolutely sublime. And mate, next season we're gonna have probably a bit of a task to try and keep the band together.
Yeah, for sure, mate.
It's, these guys are showing levels. Like, I was chatting to a bloke behind me yesterday, and he was saying, neither of them two will look out of place in Arsenal's midfield. And we're talking about potential Premier League title winning side there. So it just goes to show, mate, it was just a fantastic performance. And it was nice that, again, as I mentioned earlier, mate, for the squads to get used in the way that it did, to bring on Callum Chambers, Jan Bednarek, Matty Cash, Danny Ings as well, obviously. We love him. Coutinho looked a lot leaner when he came on as well. I don't know if he's maybe lost a bit of weight, but he certainly looked like it. It's nice that he's getting everybody involved, mate. It's a squad game, and to chuck Jan in, especially, I think, you don't need to do that, especially in the position that we're in. So for him to get sort of 10 minutes, again, I think it just goes to show what kind of character that Unai is. But I'm so happy, mate. I'm so happy. We've got the Wolves game in like 2 days now, isn't it? So maybe we'll come back tomorrow and do a quick preview for you guys. But we just need to thank you guys as well, not only Villa, but for you guys, because we obliterated our second target of 7,000 subscribers by the new year. So there will be another shirt giveaway on top of the one that we're doing. We'll give away 2 shirts. We'll probably sort that out at the end of the month. So we'll let you guys know how to get involved and all that kind of stuff in that. So yeah, just a massive thank you to you guys. A shout out to you for sticking with us. You guys know it's January, it's transfer rumor season. That's when Dan and I come alive. There will be like 50 podcasts a day, probably, if the links ever pick up. Dan and I like to cover that kind of stuff. And make sure, if you haven't already, that you check out Instagram and TikTok. It's at VillaFillerPod on Instagram and at Heart of the Heart on TikTok. And watch the YouTube Shorts if you're not doing that as well. A lot of you are, though. So thank you to all the new subscribers from the YouTube Shorts. You guys have really taken to that like a duck to water. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and up the Villa.